Okay, I have audio. So I'm going to talk about inventing a whole new branch of robotics, which I bet, but not for money, you have never thought of, and that's called socially assistive robotics. I'll tell you what it is and why it's exciting. So this is a really exciting time in robotics, and of course it's always an exciting time in everyone's field when they're doing the work in that field, but it's especially true for me in my field. And that is because we have amazingly sophisticated machines now in a way that not only did we never have them before, but because they are so sophisticated in their bodies, so we have these complex machines. Maybe the Roomba vacuum cleaner, which many of you probably have, is not so complex, but pretty much all the others are. They have smaller yet more powerful brains than ever before, and they're affordable, or increasingly so. And at the same time, there are many socioeconomic factors that make us hopefully want to develop even more powerful, smaller, smarter, and more interesting robots because of the growing aging population, the healthcare crisis, lots of concerns about safety, and then we have all these young people now who are really tech savvy and want to do this kind of thing. And there's a whole national initiative on putting robotics to teach kids in elementary school about science, and this is a great thing. So people can get closer to robots than ever before. And I want to tell you why that's exciting, because there's this whole field of HRI, which means human-robot interaction, which is now finally possible, just in my lifetime. So excellent. Let's see what we can do with that. Well, this is what I think we should do with it. So there are any number of things you can do with robots, and many of them have been portrayed in movies and on TV. And I want to inspire you to think about these things with robots. We have a lot of problems as a culture, society, and an entire planet, etc. And you've heard about some of them in the first talk. Well, I'm going to focus on health and taking care of people. We have lots of people, and especially in developed countries such as this one, we have lots of people getting old, and there's no one to take care of them, and or us, I should say. I'm past a certain point there. And so, we get sick, we get old, but on the young side of the spectrum as well, we have an increasing instance of developmental disorders and so on. So there's a lot of need for one-on-one care, and there are yet not enough people to provide that care. So I want to talk about how really intelligent, personalized machines could come and help to bridge that gap. Not to replace people, but to provide care that's missing. So I want to start with a vision. Imagine a robot, not that particular one, but some robot, that can help a physical or cognitive therapist, occupational therapist, physical therapist, that's enjoyable to interact with, that is not embarrassing, so you can do things in front of the robot that you wouldn't in front of people, like you could fail, you cannot look good, you might pee in your pants, and all sorts of things that happen. That's tirelessly devoted in a way that no human ever will be, married to you or otherwise. They can get doctor or nurse or human help whenever needed, and they can help numerous people regain their independence. So we call this notion trainer-coach. Then imagine other robots, or possibly the same robots, that are very personalized caregivers, that have eyes and ears, they're easy to command, they're unobtrusive, private as necessary, but can improve your quality of life and safety. And we think of these as shepherds or guides. And then finally imagine a related vision of robots that can monitor from children into late stage of life, to look for early signals and signs of disorders of any type, and then provide continual support for people with special needs as well as just the rest of us, and help numerous people to lead fulfilled lives. So let's think of these as minder mentors. So if you put that together, you have a vision of human-centered robotics. And what I want to tell you is that this is a field that's coming. In fact, in many ways, it's already here. And it's going to do two things, one of which you already can imagine. While we're going to build robots that help people. But we're going to do something even cooler to me as a scientist and an engineer. We're actually going to use robots as tools to do science. Because really interesting things happen when you take a robot and put it together with a person, or lots of people, or lots of robots, lots of people. You can ask really interesting scientific questions. For example, I'll tell you in a little while that you can study, for example, autism, an extremely prevalent disorder in children now. 1 in 100 children is now diagnosed with autism. You can study questions about what autism might be about, which we do not understand today. And it's scary, right? Because it's affecting kids and it's lasting forever. It doesn't go away. You can neither prevent it today, nor can you cure it. Well, it's interesting that robots might be able to help us both understand autism and potentially treat it in ways that are better than what we have available today. That's just one example. So we can both do interesting scientific inquiry, cool science with robots, and also we can build robots that actually help people. So those are two sides of the same coin. That's the science and the engineering coin, and I think it's great when they play together. So I love this image. It was in the New Yorker, reprinted here with basically with approval. Jerry Groupman, who writes for the New Yorker, got interested in this work and wrote a great article. So if you are at all interested, I recommend you read that article because it'll be better than what I say. But what can these robots do? Well, the robots that I'm interested in telling you about don't even touch you. So I like to think of them as the robots with a personal touch without the touch. So what can they do? What's a robot good for if it can't touch you? Well, it can do monitoring, coaching, training, motivating you, providing companionship, socialization, addressing all sorts of things from isolation and depression to early training. And it turns out we need a lot of that. And again, we're not replacing people. People should do this. But in case you're not aware, there's the population pyramid. It used to be, it was like this, like, look at me now. Okay, there's a pyramid, right? At the top was older people, and at the bottom were young people. Well, that pyramid is no longer a pyramid. It is now a rectangle, cylinder, however you want to look at it. So unless all young people take care of the old people in the next 20 years plus, we don't have enough care for older people in the developing countries. So all of you young people sign on now and do elder care, or get into technology. So something has to fill the care gap, and the gap is widening. Again, autism, I mentioned autism. The thing that's exciting about autism on the positive side is that kids with autism, not all, because there's a tremendous spectrum disorder, many things about it that we don't understand. But it does turn out that many kids with autism are very interested in technological, mechanical, and electronic systems. They tend to like computers, they tend to like machines, they tend to like robots. And the thing that's particularly compelling is there are children with autism who will engage, talk to, and smile at a robot, and they will never do that to a human. So there are children who have smiled for the first time in their lives past the age of 3 or 4 to a robot, and their parents have never seen them smile. So there's potential there for something therapeutic, and that's what we want to explore. So we have done work with kids with autism. It's a small field, but it's getting a lot of attention. So if you read about this in the paper, you might think robots are everywhere, helping every child. Not quite, but it's a wonderful growing field. So we work with Children's Hospital Los Angeles. We work with kids with autism, and we've seen wonderful things. We have seen things like this video down here. So kids with autism, one disorder they have is imitation. They cannot match what they see to what they need to do. Here's a little boy who will not imitate if asked, and yet if a robot strikes a pose, he will completely spontaneously strike the same pose as the robot. We have other examples here where the kids verbalize, where they don't otherwise. They come close to the robot, they play with the robot, they touch the robot. Again, the thing that's hard to appreciate here is you see these kids and they act, quote, normal, but they don't do that otherwise. So the whole point is there's something happening, the human-machine interaction, that we might be able to tease apart, to study the disorder, and also to help the kids. Here's another one. Where, oh.
And what will happen if I touch the green one? Let's see.
Let's see. So one of the things we find out is that it seems pretty typical kid, right? This is not a typical kid. So an amazing thing we find is if you make it just a toy and it blows bubbles, kids lose interest after a while. They go sit next to the wall. But if it's a robot and it responds contingently means basically depending on what the child does, the robot responds in some intelligent way, the kids remain engaged and they show social behavior. So this is exciting. Then let's look on the other side of the age spectrum. So everyone's heard about stroke. Right now there are 800,000 strokes per year happening, and that number will double in the next 15 years. But what's scarier is that stroke incidence is growing in younger populations. So people over 40, that's many of us, are getting more and more strokes. So stroke is here to stay. Then you have lots of problems. Movement problems, cognitive problems. So who is going to help people after stroke? So one thing that we find is when you have a stroke, what happens is you need to fight your brain to recover. So let's say you've had a stroke, you're right-handed, as is typical, and you've gone home and it's morning time and you want to reach for the coffee tin and make your coffee. So what are you going to do? Well, your right arm is not working because you've been led home very quickly because insurance doesn't cover very much. Even if the best insurance that you get, it's going to give you about 2 months of recovery. You need it lifelong. So your right arm doesn't work. So what are you going to do? Well, obviously, you're going to reach with your left to get that coffee can. Guess what's happening now? Your brain is rewiring, so now your left becomes more able. But your right is never going to recover. What you need to do is not use your left, slow your life down, way down, and take the 3 hours that it's going to take you to get that coffee can. So now what's happening? You have to battle your brain. You have to make your brain recover. through something that is guaranteed to depress you and keep you out of resuming your life. These are the forces that are happening in your brain and in the motivation that drives us as people. This is why the vast majority, about between 85 and 90% of stroke survivors, have a permanent deficit. Why? Because they need to exercise for hours per day, but they want to get back to their lives. They need to get back to their job, to their families. Well, it doesn't work that way. So what is going to provide that care and especially motivation to make you exercise around your life so you can both resume your life and at the same time get that training, which is not enough just to say to someone, come on, suck it up and do it. You try it, okay? You're fighting your brain. So it turns out machines might be able to help us. So we're very interested in these machines that can make you do things that you don't otherwise want to do. I know you can go wild with that in storytelling, but I'm just going to focus it now on therapeutic things that you don't want to do. So I want to show you some videos of real stroke patients going through recovery with robots, and just to see what happens when you put human nature into the loop. First, we start with something very tame. Here's a video of a stroke patient exercising. The robot is watching.
One of your choice.
So that's a robot over there.
Continue when you touch the pad A.
The robot tells him what to do. That's a synthetic voice. That's what it sounds like. Doesn't sound like Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking chooses his really bad synthesizer because it defines him, but this is, by now, but this is, it sounds much better these days.
9 seconds. You did not touch the wire at all. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so, you can do therapy, and motivate some people. People are much, much more motivated to do this than if you give them a computer or a PDA. We've done all these comparisons. But let's see what really happens with human nature. Okay, this robot is not even going to talk, so just to see what happens.
I guess you just told me I should do it.
Okay, she has a speech deficit as well as a right arm, dominant arm stroke deficit, okay? She's going to shelve books. Sorry that this is overlapping.
Slow down.
The robot just
Lucy
bings.
in the chocolate factory.
So she's basically, the robot just beeps whenever she shelves the book, but now she's getting herself sped up by her own actions.
Is this for quantity or quality?
She keeps talking to the robot. There's no one there in the room.
If it's quality.
So what I'm trying to, watch what happens now. What do you think is going to happen? All right, so she cheats. Would you cheat on a robot? Well, it turns out, and she's a school teacher. God forbid. So I'm sure she says many times, don't cheat. Well, people cheat. And it turns out it's very correlated with your personality, especially extroverts, which she is, and we do a lot of personality testing ahead of time to gauge behavior. But see now what happens. This is really fun. What happens in the next session with the robot? This robot talks, so let's see what happens.
How about we do a fun activity where I'm the robot and you're the librarian and you put the books away?
Oh.
Okay, what's she going to do?
That's great.
Maybe he knows.
Maybe he does. Again, there's no puppeteering here. These are autonomous robots sensing what's going on. There are no people involved. No man behind the
How
curtain.
does he know?
How does he know? So, people want to cheat, and it turns out with certain personalities, you have to let them cheat. She's much more motivated to do exercises when she thinks she's beating the robot. Other people, highly compliant, they just do what the robot says, and that's good, and they're done. So different things that motivate different people. And by the way, real physical therapists who are overworked and underpaid cannot pitch their particular program to your specific needs and mood and personality because it's just, well, they're not paid enough to do that. And there are too many people with stroke. So here's a niche where you can have personalized machines giving you just what you need. And then as you get older, aging in place, people want to stay at home. How do we keep them motivated and not depressed? And then once they go into a managed care facility, which is proven to shorten one's lifespan, what can we do to also mitigate that? And then what about Alzheimer's? Everyone's getting it, by the way. So we worked with people with Alzheimer's because the first question was, what if you put robots and old people together? Well, it'll never work. They've never seen robots. They'll hate it, right? They're going to hate it. Well, they didn't. They loved it. In fact, they hated the computer screen because we did a comparison, side-by-side robot computer. And they looked at the computer and they said, I don't want a TV. I have a TV. Pretty bright. So here are some examples. These people, not funny, these people are stage 2 Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's only has 3 stages. And it's a degenerative disorder. There's no way to stop it. There may be ways to slow it down, but you can't stop it and you can't reverse it. These people are one step away from absolutely just sitting there catatonic. And yet, we put them together with robots, and they were able to improve their performance on a task The task is where the music plays, they have to push the right button. So you measure how correctly they push the button, how correctly they recognize the song, and how quickly they push the button. And we could actually train them to get better at this. And then we asked them how much they liked it, and let me tell you about it. This was a 6-month study, so I'm not just telling you about some, cool one of.
Button.
All right, so here's a robot. All right, these are early. You'll see them get more sophisticated.
You pushed the silence button. Good job, you pushed the correct button.
All right, so, this is the silence button. There's no music. Ah, yay, the cheering from a really simple robot. Now.
The song is about a beautiful girl named Daisy.
All right, so she's pretty good. Yeah, the robot is going to cheer her, so okay. Now let's see what happens if the person is not so good at recognizing which song it is. The robot will actually sing along. Now I know you're all going to want a soundtrack of this, so just listen and enjoy. It's not on YouTube.
Sing it together. I want some red.
Look, she's singing.
For a blue lady, Mr. Paris, take my order.
It's just, the singing is amazing, isn't it? This is why we hire people with PhDs. This is in particular an MIT PhD, like me, so hey, I'm not going to sing, be happy. But the important thing is, actually, if we were to plug in, let's say Sinatra's, I don't even know who that is, that predates me. If you were to plug in the actual artist and have the robot sing with the sound of the actual artist, people think it's weird. Because even people with Alzheimer's know that that's not Sinatra or whoever it is. So you can't fake things like that. But if the robot is actually human in the sense of being imperfect, it sings badly, people really bond with that. So what we observe over a 6-month study is people improve on the task, they talk more, they smile more, they look at the robot, and they tell these stories like, oh, I don't want to go to the market tomorrow because my buddy is coming. Well, again, these are stage 2 Alzheimer's people. They do not leave the room. They're institutionalized. So the therapists were really excited. They were weaving the robots into their story, and they were not doing that with the caregivers or with other technologies people had tried. So we thought that was pretty cool. But then we turned over to, able-bodied, able-minded older people, and we said, what else is needed? Well, exercise. By the way, you may not know this, but there is nothing that is known today that can offset the onset of, that can delay or prevent Alzheimer's other than physical exercise. So all this stuff about doing crossword puzzles and staying smart and presidents getting Alzheimer's, nothing helps but exercise. So get out there and exercise. If you have a lifelong exercise regime, you're less likely to have Alzheimer's. So we're trying to get older people to exercise, and we're trying to get them to engage their brain while they do it. So here is a relatively cutting-edge robot, much better than the ones you've seen so far. Let's see what he can do.
I think you got the hang of it. Now let's begin. Just follow me. And remember that you can take the break at any time. Here we go. Nice job. Super. Excellent. Awesome. Lower your left hand a little bit.
So it's a coach. It doesn't just say things. It actually corrects.
Nice. You've successfully done 10 exercise gestures. Keep up the good work. Let's continue. Awesome. Okay, let's try it. Move your arms.
Now in this
Show me
game,
what to do.
the person shows the robot what to do, because people like to have control. And it's been shown that people who have a little bit of control in their lives live longer. As little as watering plants. So we did a long study with 38 people. We found that
Exercise.
they love to be in control.
This is my favorite game. It's so much fun.
We're cutting out the person's name, that's why you're getting the glitches. So the idea is, if you let people mix it up and teach the robot at some time, they exercise longer and better, and they like it more. And then there's the memory game. How much can you remember?
Excellent. Now repeat the entire gesture sequence. Start with gesture 1 and end with gesture 4. Sorry, that's incorrect.
So it turns out different personalities and different disorders require different kinds of training, as you'd imagine. Some people love to be pushed, And they love the fact that the robot always beats them, because the robot has infinite memory compared to you and me. And the longest sequence of exercises we've done is about 22, and that was a Ph.D. student. So the older people can't go quite as far. But it's something you can push them indefinitely, and people love that. Other people need more nurturing, a little bit more coddling, more like, you're doing great, oh, 3 is so excellent, let's see if you can do 3 again. And the nice thing about the robot is that it can be either pre-programmed or it can learn over time what each individual's pattern is, so they can provide just the right kind of feedback. So let me tell you, as I close, what the actual research questions are. Sounds like cool technology. What's the research? First of all, why a robot? So surely you should be asking, yeah, robots are cool, but why don't I do this with a computer, which is cheaper, or with a PDA or a smartphone or whatever? Well, it turns out something really interesting happens when you put a physically co-located physical robot next to a person. People respond differently. It's just the way we're wired. We're wired as social animals, and we respond to co-present physical creatures in a way that's different from the way that we respond to computers. And by the way, if you want to tell me that we will evolve over time to respond differently to computers, sure, just give me, a few, how many millennia, okay? So it's not going to happen really soon. So something interesting happens, but how can we now understand and manipulate that? So we're interested in running these studies, comparing, manipulating body language. How do you understand body language? How do you manipulate it in a controlled way? In a way that isn't just, I don't know, make the eyebrows go up and see what happens. We're interested in getting people really engaged, really interested, compliant, so that they do what they're supposed to do. Because remember, this is about improving human patterns of behavior. Are we making friends and influencing people? We hope so. We would like these robots to be socially appropriate, to say the right thing at the right time, not too late, to look at the eyes the right way, to do just the right stuff so that you feel at ease with them and they help you. And then finally, will it last? So we've done studies as long as 6 months, and it did last. Although you could say, well, that was Alzheimer's people, so to them everything is novel every time. And that is true to some degree. So it remains to be seen how long these effects will last, and it's a really interesting area of study. What I like to say is, half the marriages don't last. So, I think it's a really interesting challenge to see what kind of technology you can develop that people accept over a period of months and years. And then if they do love it, which we find increasingly, people say, don't take the robot away. And what happens when the robot breaks down? Or, as an already existing example, those Roomba vacuum cleaners, right? You can buy them for $200, they're made for $30. So these vacuum cleaners break occasionally. I have no interest in the company, though it was started by my advisor. So I have a Roomba, we don't use it. So basically, I need a big vacuum cleaner. When your Roomba breaks, chances are, apparently statistically, you're going to send it in and you're going to say, I want that one back. You fix that one, and I'm going to etch my name in it. This is what people do. Well, again, this thing is made for $30, so they would rather just swap you a new one. But people don't want it. They say, no, it knows me. It knows me, and it knows what to do, and I want mine back. So there's something, and this is, of course, it doesn't know you. This is not like, a dog or anything. It doesn't know you. But yet people are willing to suspend disbelief and form relationships, even with a Roomba. So just think, as these things happen, our measure of success suddenly becomes our greatest challenge. Okay? So everything I told you about are real physical robots, no man behind the curtain. We don't do experiments with cardboard robots. I just reviewed a paper where someone had a cardboard robot, and they told people it was real. I can't trust the study. Would you believe a cardboard robot is real? Well, you can make much cooler looking robots. And in fact, we're limited by that. We need really cool looking robots. But it turns out what it looks like isn't that important, which, we know that from human relationships as well. Yes. So it's the behavior that matters, not the form. You can take a robot that is just that little wheeled thing with a head that spins back and forth, and even if it moves around randomly, people feel watched. But if it moves back and forth steadily, they'll say, it's stupid. It's just a surveillance camera. Okay, so there are all sorts of subtleties about human behavior that we get to study because no one else has studied this before, because there were never robots before, and we were not evolved to interact with robots. So it's very interesting to understand human behavior relative to machines and see how we can use machines to study, to understand, and to improve human quality of life. And so these are my closing testimonials from our participants. So here's the little boy with autism. This is what he says.
But everything's good with these robots.
So he says, everything is good with these robots. So you first wonder, what's the big deal? Did you think it wouldn't be? But you have to think about this boy. What does he hear a lot? That not everything is good with him. And so it's nice to think that there might be technologies in robotics that might actually truly make his life better. Then we have I love this stroke patient. She's very articulate and doesn't mind us showing her face.
How nice to have someone a robot to tell you, you're using your right hand, this is great, instead of telling you, please use your right hand, like my husband does.
That was not scripted. But I do like to think that when we're creating these technologies, we're helping the entire family. We're helping the caregivers as much as the people who need the care. And then this is her last quote.
The sooner that you can do this, the better.
So she's our poster child, and indeed, that's why I do what I do. Thank you.